You're listening to episode 91 of the D6 podcast.
Here's the encouragement I give you. The shortest distance between your child's heart, your grown child's heart, and Christ is you.
Parents need to own that they are the primary disciplers of their child.
Our goal in parenting is not for our kids ultimately to get a great education, as good as that is. Our goal is not for them to be great athletes. Our goal is not for them to go on great dates and find a great husband or a great wife. Our goal is not for them to have a great career with a great job, making great money. Our goal is for them to love a great God.
You're listening to the D6 podcast. Here's your hosts, Ron Hunter and Jeremy Lee.
This is the family ministry podcast that helps you connect the church and home. And today, I'm excited about D6 Days. How many years have you guys done D6 Days, Ron?
Wow, I've lost track.
I was surprised you with that one, didn't I? I know it was around a few years before I showed up, so man, it's got to be 5 or 6 years now. You guys have been doing a great job. A few years ago, though, you guys basically transitioned it into an online conference.
Correct.
That I believe people would pay for, and it's just been this amazing resource that people can see main stage talks, they can see interviews, there's a variety in the material. Names like Dr. Gary Chapman will be with you this year, Melissa McDonald, Megan Marshman, Dr. Josh McDowell, his son Dr. Sean McDowell, Dr. Richard Ross, Beth Guckenberger, the Skit Guys, on and on and on. Chewbacca Mom, Candace Payne, Jeffrey Wallace. I mean, I can just list forever all of these amazing speakers that'll be there. And you guys are gonna love the price tag for this. And I'm just jumping right into promotional here. I'm sorry, but I'm just geeked about it because we're running out of time. I'm gonna make sure people know about this. D6days.com is where you can sign up. And this is a free resource. Free. It's free. And so, listen, Ron, would you set up, because every year we have some really strategic leaders that have started to do this, and I want to set our listeners up to have this kind of strategy. If you have a volunteer team or a staff team, maybe you have a staff meeting or something like that, a regular meeting that has some kind of training. If you are, you still have time to do it. You could set up a training around D6 Days, couldn't you?
You could. And, this goes for paid or volunteers. I get this is days of the work week. But if you let people know ahead of time, say, hey, what if we just had a big gathering at our church of all of our teachers, all of our key departmental leaders, whether it's youth, children, preschool, you name it. And they got together and you all gathered around the big screen. You got a projector and you projected. You brought in pizza or whatever your favorite catering dish is. And you get a chance to watch this together, debrief in between together. This would be a momentum boost for your church unlike anything you saw. Again, you as a leader, you're listening because you're always wanting to learn from leaders. Don't be selfish with this. Bring other people in and help yourself transfer this knowledge and wisdom to others so that they jump in and they can take self-initiative that you don't have to direct them any longer. It will free up so much of your time and attention when people understand the why behind why you're trying to teach them to do certain things differently.
And here's another win. Let's say, for whatever reason, you can't gather your team in one physical place to watch it together. Something like this makes it even more beautiful. Send out a link. Send out a link to your volunteers. Send out a link to your parents, because there'll be a lot of content in there that they will grab and get a hold of. And even the stuff that's targeted to ministers, when a parent hears it, they start to think, wow, my church thinks this way? How amazing.
Yeah.
It's good for parents and volunteers, in my opinion, and you can just send a link.
That's correct. And Jeremy's right with this link. I heard from somebody yesterday who said that they just listen to podcasts most of their workday because they're at their computer and they're doing work that allows them to listen to something running in the background and it doesn't take away from their work. Mm-hmm. If you can't watch, you can listen to this. Even though it's a video event, you're watching. If you just had it on the background, if you have that, you're on a job where you can just listen to audio, whether going down the road, if you got that kind of bandwidth, or sitting at a desk, just get on and listen to it.
All right. So
Okay.
we had said we wanted to hit D6 days on this episode. Well, I wanted to hit it with a sledgehammer. I wanted to make sure y'all knew d6days.com is awesome and it's free. And I know you people, y'all like free. I know that to be true. So jump on, sign up, and utilize that resource, I hope. Now, as we jump into the episode, speaking of friends of D6 and the influence that they've had, Brian Haynes, Dr. Brian Haynes, if you guys have not heard of him, Google that guy because he is great stuff. Yeah. He's going to come and talk to us very specifically about the how to foster generosity in the hearts of our kids. This was a very selfish interview for me. I've gotten some access to not just Brian, but his wife Angela, and I see how they operate with their kids, and I was a little jealous, and I basically did this interview and said, hey, I want my kids to have a generous heart like I see your kids having. Teach me how to do this. So this is mentoring. This is a very parent-friendly interview, as we were talking about earlier. You're going to enjoy that. And then after Brian, who do we have?
Well, we're going to hear from Amy Rienow, who I think most of our listeners know about Rob, who has spoken and written a number of books. But if you look very closely at some of his books that Rob has written, Amy is the co-author. And I'm not sure, but what she's the brains behind a lot of this area. Amy is talking to us about one of the books they wrote together, 5 Reasons for Spiritual Apathy in Teens, What Parents Can Do to Help. Very, very insightful from a mom, and she is absolutely brilliant.
And as is most often true, many times we get to know the husband and we're more impressed with the wife.
Yes, don't tell Rob.
Just kidding, Rob.
Don't tell
Rob. We love
Rob.
both of you. Thank you for Amy for being with us. We're excited to hear your interview. But first, after the break, we're going to be hearing from Dr. Brian Haynes. He's going to be talking to us about how to foster generosity in the hearts of your kids.
Are you looking for the right conference to attend this year? The D6 Conference is a family ministry conference designed for your entire ministry team. Come hear from over 30 speakers and network with churches that share your passion for reaching families. Family ministry isn't just another program. It's one of the most important things your church can do to make a difference in your city. At the D6 Conference, you'll be inspired and equipped to take your family ministry to the next level. To learn more about the D6 Conference, just go to d6conference.com.
I'm here with Brian Haynes, who is a huge friend of D6. I think I ask you this every year, but have you been here since the first one?
Yeah. I don't even know how long ago that was, but
I think I heard 9 years.
Yeah.
9 years. Like,
crazy.
Wow. Well, it's nice to have you back. We always love having you. Brian Haynes, if you guys don't know who that is, he serves as the lead pastor for Bay Area Church. He's a writer and frequent speaker. Dr. Haynes is best known for his work in family ministry and generational discipleship. That is so true. And most recently co-authored the book Relentless Parenting, The Crucial Pursuit of Your Teen's Heart with his wife, Angela, who I've also interviewed, and I might actually enjoy that interview more. I'm sorry.
She's good.
She killed it.
She can come right back and talk
You're like,
again
hey, if you liked it that much, I'll just get out of here.
She's awesome, really.
All right. Well, I wanted to talk with you about, because, you are one of the first voices in Milestones. You've been talking about influencing kids and helping parents build the spiritual leadership in their kids. And one of the ways that, and this is almost selfish for me, I want my boys to be servants. I want them to have a heart of generosity and service. But sometimes I get stumped on how to, because what am I going to do? You're grounded if you don't serve. I mean, it's a tough thing, So I just want some help. And I was thinking that you might do this for me. So I don't want my boys to be self-obsessed jerks. I don't believe they are, but I have a fear of it. So what scripture can I offer to my boys if I want to teach them and begin to lay down a biblical foundation for them to serve others?
Yeah. So there's really 2 that I think about a lot. And as I thought about your question, I say these things to our girls over and over again, pray these things for our girls over and over again. The first one is just Matthew 22, the love God, love people passage. So it's that restatement of the Shema, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And so I think they need to get loving God is loving other people. And we just talk about, in fact, we pray every morning, help Eden, help Haley, help Madeline to love people like God loves people. And we just, throughout the course of their life, sort of demonstrate what that looks like. But that's one. And then the other one that is fascinating to me out of Leviticus, and it says, it's Leviticus 19. And nobody ever reads this passage of scripture, but I'm a weirdo. So it tells the people that they need to leave the corners of their fields for the poor and the sojourner. Oh. And you would know like the generosity or the servant heart of a person by how big these corners of the fields are after they harvest. And I always talk to our girls about like how big are our corners, and so we kind of use those two to get us thinking about others, because I think when you think about others, it's easier to serve. The first step is thinking more about other people than thinking about yourself. So those are two really foundational pieces for me.
I love that. I wrote down the Leviticus passage. I'm gonna have to study that.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
That's good.
Are there any books or resources I could use to teach my boys the principles behind serving others?
Yeah, so for little ones, I don't have any recommendation. I racked my brain. I thought about it. I have nothing. There may be stuff
Let's
out there.
Let's pretend they're older.
But if they're older, I like them to read two books, and they're probably two everybody knows. One is Radical by David Platt. The other is Crazy Love by Francis Chan. And both of those, for our oldest one, and now our second one is reading those, they are sort of mind changers, game changers, for them when it comes to how am I going to live my life. And I think when they're 15, 16 years old, that's a great time to sort of introduce, hey, here's a book you should read. One, because our culture just feeds that, at 16 especially, feeds that entitlement thing a lot. And so those two books I think are really good for teenagers.
Perfect. So I know at some point I have to actually take them to serve others. We can't just talk about it, learn about it. How would you suggest I go about doing that?
Yeah, so I think you start young and simple. And I can only tell you what we've done, and maybe that'll help. But when they're young, they just serve with us when it's appropriate. So if we're going to visit somebody, they may go with us. They've been to the hospital with us to see people. But also, we involve them in event around missions in the church from the time they're young locally. So we start locally, and then we have a plan when they're teenagers. When they hit middle school, we send them to, in our world, Galveston Urban Ministries in the summer. It's a ministry that focuses on inner city Galvestonians and really tries to help homeless people and that kind of thing. And so we let them be a part of serving for a week in Galveston Urban Ministry in 7th and 8th grade. And then 9th and 10th grade, we send them to Boston. My brother's actually a church planner up there in Boston.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So we send them up there, and we let them be a part of helping encourage church planters, but also doing the real hands-on service kind of work that they do to connect with people. And so they do that 9th and 10th grade, and then we have a partnership in the Middle East, and for 11th and 12th grade, we take them to the Middle East with us to serve in that partnership. Wow. And that's that sort of progression. So we kind of demonstrate it and teach it in younger years, and then involve them locally, nationally, internationally before they go to college. And I mean, we're just launched the first one to college, so we're just seeing the fruit of it.
Wow, that's a great plan, locally, nationally, internationally. I love it. All right, so I'd like to think that I can read a few verses and take them to a service project and it'll be all good, but I'm not that naive. It's more than just one experience. So what are habits and patterns that maybe we can develop that helps it sink in? Yeah. I mean, what we just described were kind of like events, Mm-hmm. What's the as you go habits we can form with our kids?
So I think this one that this is easy to say, but harder to do. If you fight entitlement, and I think I do fight entitlement somewhere deep in my heart. But I think one of the greatest things you can do as a father or a mother is to demonstrate service in the family early on, so that they can see dad serves, mom serves us. Not that you want to do it so much that it creates an entitlement, but you do it in a way that they see what service is, and that they connect with that. So I think that's part of it, just demonstrating that in the family. But then I think another part of that is that you need to let them see you serve. So everything in the family doesn't necessarily, there are secrets. Not everybody has to know everything you do service-wise, but I think it's a treasure to let your kids see what you're doing service-wise. So when you give, whether it's financially, sacrificially, something like that, to somebody else or for some cause or to church, I think that they should see you giving. I think when you go serve for no other reason than somebody needs help, I think that they should see that, be a part of that. So don't hide it from them. Don't they're not old enough. We just recently had this massive hurricane in our city, and everybody flooded. 11,000 homes in my ministry context, within 5 miles of my church. 11,000 homes. And so even our 10-year-old has been in a home packing up stuff, watching us muck out, but she's packing boxes, and she's in the middle of that because people need help, So I think you just you teach it, but then you just involve them, and you don't keep what you do separate from them. And then the other part of that is I think you tell them the stories of like what came out of it. Usually God does something with service. It's like you're giving him something to bless. Usually he blesses that, and there's a story, and telling them that story or the end of the story, the rest of the story, I think is a big deal.
I love that. So you mentioned it. I think entitlement is a trigger for me as a dad. Like, I'm scared to death that I'm going to have the stereotypical entitled white kid.
Yeah, I get it.
And so how can I make sure that's not going to happen?
Yeah. So I think we have to resist, and Angela has taught me this in so many ways. And I think having girls as a father, there's something inside of me for my girls that I think if they were boys, I would make them do this, but since they're not boys, I'm not going to do that, right? It's not something I should necessarily do or think like, but it's what goes on inside of my head. And so Angela and I have been talking a lot about and applying this idea that it's not our job to make it easy for them. In fact, we need to let them earn things. We need to let them pay their way from time to time. And so I remember one time we had a big fight over mowing the yard, like, I don't have time to mow the yard. Angela said, the girls are old enough to mow the yard. They should have to mow the yard. They have phones. They should mow the yard. Right? I'm like, I'll do it. And finally, I let them mow the yard, and I realized, like, yeah, they do. They need to mow the yard.
And you don't need to mow.
And I don't need to mow the yard anymore. But beyond that, it's just like teaching them the value of money, because I don't think kids get that, especially in the suburbs sort of environments. I think they have a lot handed to them. And so really teach them the value, and this would be a whole nother podcast, but just teach them the value of what a dollar is, how hard it is to get, and then how quickly it can be spent is good. And the outlay of that is, like, we do have a daughter at Texas A&M right now who she has, she pays for her own gas, her own food, her own entertainment, all that kind of stuff, because we don't want her to be entitled, right? So we want to help with tuition and all that, but we want to train them to think that they need to lean into doing their part, right? And so it's easier for Angela than it is for me. It's hard for me for some reason. I want to make it easy, but pushing back against that and letting them feel the tension of earning things, I think is really, really good.
Yeah, cool. All right, well, I want to hear you talk about relentless parenting. This book is something came out last year. You and Angela both wrote it together. Just tell us from your perspective about the book and how a youth minister or a parent of a teenager could use it.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think it's an important work from this standpoint that I think there's a lot out there on sort of how to parent, but I think it's very easy to focus on the how-to or the prescription or even the milestone path and try to check those boxes off, but forget heart connection. And so this book, and Richard Ross has been talking about this for years, since I was in seminary, I've heard him talk about this. But this book is all about, you need milestones, you need a plan, all that kind of stuff. But more than that, you need heart connection and how to develop that heart connection. Parents don't get it or are too busy for it out there. And so the way youth pastors or whoever could use it in the context of their church is to really form groups and go through the book together with parents. There's discussion questions that a group could sit and talk about and think about, apply, come back the next week, and like, how did I listen? How did I show compassion? Those kinds of things. It's a simple read, but I think it's an important one, just from the standpoint that it moves us beyond plan to relationship, and really that should have come first. You know what I mean?
But speaking of plan, you have legacymilestones.com, which is also a great resource for churches.
Yeah, so we are all about the church and home thing. We want and work hard at helping church leaders really renovate their church model to be able to connect with homes and renovate homes so they can make disciples of the next generation. So we create this common path and help churches make it unique to their families, their ministry context, their church. But it really helps for everybody to be on the same page and know how we're partnering together to make disciples. So that's what that's all about. I encourage people to go there, take a look at it. If we can help in any way in that regard, we'd love to. So
I believe you when you say that. I think he means that, guys.
I do mean that. That's why the website is there.
That's right. If you want to connect with him, find out, get some help. Brian has literally written the book on it and one of the first voices in that arena. So definitely somebody you want to check out. Again, I want to remind you, legacymilestones.com. Go to d6family.com for the book. And thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Have you ever left a conference so excited to download what you've learned, but when you start to talk, no one gets it? When you pull out your notes, no one responds the way you envisioned? D6 Days is a free 2-day online event designed to help you share the same vision, passion, and learning experienced at the D6 conference. Because when we share things effectively, momentum builds exponentially, and D6 Days is a convenient opportunity for you to share with everyone, your staff, volunteers, and church family. During the event, you'll hear from around 30 voices in family ministry and generational discipleship. The team at D6 provides this free because we want every person who's committed to generational discipleship to be equipped regardless of their budget. And we've crafted an online environment where we can interact and engage with you. Whether you are in the comfort of your home, at the office, or watching D6 Days over coffee. Join us February 12th and 13th for D6 Days 2018. To sign up, go to d6days.com.
All right, Brian Haynes, thank you so much. I am also, I try my best to get as many Facebook friends as I can, Ron. It helps me feel good about myself. And Brian is one of my Facebook friends. And I'm going to tell you something, all the weather that went through Houston and the flooding and all the things that happened with Houston in the past year. It was so fun to watch Brian lead his not just his church, but his community through that. Like, I was just cheering him on, man. I was just like, wow, what a cool leader. He would post video. He would show and teach and people how to respond as followers of Christ through this. Mm-hmm. He showed the love of Christ to his community. They opened up their church. It was amazing.
They did. I mean, this guy He literally is a great trainer on so many different levels. In fact, if I were you, I would take this episode, which does nothing but train parents. I'd pass this on to as many parents in your church that you can. Let these high-capacity leaders get down to the parent level for you.
Now, when I talk to ministers, and really especially youth ministers, you ask them, I used to speak like full-time, go around and speak all the time. And one of the questions I'd do before I'd go to a church, I'd say, hey, what are your kids struggling with? What's a topic we want to make sure we're hitting? And just 9 times out of 10, really 10 times out of 10, you could almost guarantee they were going to say, my teenager's just apathetic. They believe in God, but that's about it. They don't really care a whole lot. There's just not a lot of passion. I just want them to feel passion. And so that's why I love this topic we're about to discuss with Amy Rienow. She's going to discuss apathy in teens.
She is. And, again, coming at it from a mom's perspective and how moms and dads can have a combined front into their teens. And knowing where your child is, their love language, how to meet their needs, and knowing that among multiple children. Don't cookie cutter parent your children. You can't treat the second, third, and fourth the way you treat the first and second. So be different. Listen to Amy over this. I love there's a phrase she uses in here, you need to woo the heart of your kids. Woo the heart of your kids.
I love that.
That's my big takeaway from this interview. So look for that moment.
Let's listen to Amy.
We're sitting here with Amy Rienow, and Amy is such a talented mom, incredible wife. I feel like I know her far better than what I've actually had experience with her because Rob, her husband, and I have shared many hours together, whether it's behind stage, at conferences, traveling together. Rob and I have been overseas together, speaking at conferences at the same time. I will tell you that this family has impacted people around the globe, literally around the globe. And if you're not familiar with them, you need to go check out their website, visionaryfam.com. That's visionary, F-A-M, short for family. And you can see their incredible family. Rob and Amy have been married since 1994, and they have 7 kids. So if you talk about experience, they understand it, and that's boys and girls. And that leads me to our questions today. So let me first say welcome, Amy, to the D6 podcast.
Thank you for having me.
You and Rob have written together, and you're in the middle of another writing project right now, and we will have you back on to talk about that one a little bit later in the year. But the one I want to talk about now is an item that I unfortunately think there's still a great need for. And the title of your book says it all, 5 Reasons for Spiritual Apathy in Teens. That certainly is a true story, and in this book, you deal with 6 chapters, and I want to just read the chapters to the audience. You deal with chapter 1 is the parent's heart. 2 is the teenager's heart. Chapter 3 is the presence of secret sin. Chapter 4, a lack of spiritual nourishment. Chapter 5, a spirit of rebellion. And chapter 6, heart-changing prayers. I think we need a podcast for every one of these chapters. But let me first start out with, you talk about the parent's heart. How important is that as a precedent to everything else dealing with the apathetic approach that a teenager might have towards God?
Yeah, that's a great place to start. I think it's interesting that when we have little kids, I think we kind of naturally understand as parents that, we have a lot of influence over our kids. We have a lot of influence over the decisions they make. And I will never say we have influence on the heart. We can't change hearts. Only God can change hearts. But as our children get older, culture kind of tells us as parents that they're taking over, that teachers are taking over, coaches are taking over. And on the parent side, life can get fuller with whether we're back into our careers or just if you're a busy mom like I am, you're more kids, more activities that are pulling you away from, I would say, relational interactions with your kids. So that as teenagers get older, I think it's very easy for parents to feel that their influence is no longer that important. And we get seduced by that and then get caught up into our own lives. And therefore, we kind of get on this parallel track with teenagers going one direction and parents going another. And we've lost those relational touch points.
That's really good. And we become only communication touch points with them at that point when they become teenagers. So in the middle of the book, The Presence of Secret Sin, your husband Rob uses the phrase that we often hear parents say, hey, our son or our daughter is a pretty good kid or a pretty good teenager. And we do. They grow up in church and man, when I read his story, it resonated with me because that's how my parents would have described me. But what it meant was I was really good at getting away with things they didn't know.
Yeah.
How then does a parent address what they do not know?
That's a very good question. I think, first of all, just with that awareness that when you're having conversations with your teenager, I think it's hard to ask tough questions. It's hard to say to your teenager, hey, are you tempted to look at things on your phone that you know you're not supposed to? With my girls, I think a lot of things are, whether it be manipulating situations with their friends. I have to ask very directly pointed questions. Did you just lie to me about the time that you were supposed to be home, for example? And I think our tendency as parents to not want to be the ones to bring up the direct question that needs to be addressed. And we have to realize that if we don't bring it up, they're not going to bring it up. That's not going to happen. So asking your teenager, did you just lie to me, gives them an opportunity to speak the truth.
Absolutely. Now, Amy, that when you have a good relationship with your kids, having that direct of a question is a lot easier. That doesn't create an escalating rebuttal from your teenager. But for a parent to start this and they haven't ever done this before, how do you have them ease into this?
Well, there's all different varieties of relationships with your kids. And first of all, I would say even with a good relationship with your kids, see, when you ask that kind of question, it can escalate quite quickly. So, but if you have no relationship with your kids, if that's the point that you're at, then you are at a very different place. The whole goal as a parent is to really start building a relationship. You can't go in talking about secret sin if there's no relationship there. That will not be productive. So I always say to people, it's still our job as parents to woo the hearts of our kids. I feel like, the verse that I'm reminded of over and over in Romans, it says that God's kindness is what leads us to repentance. So as a parent, I have used that to woo my kids with kindness. If I do not, whether I have a good relationship or no relationship, it's that method of realizing that they don't owe me their heart. I mean, we think that they do, but reality is they're a person and it's a relationship, and we have to do our part to help increase relational connectedness. And I do that often by wooing my kids' hearts.
So I want to go further there. How do we woo in the midst of correction with teenagers? What's that balance that you recommend? That's our final question. I want you to kind of walk our audience through that, balancing that wooing of their heart when you also are addressing discipline areas.
Okay. First of all, you have to get rid of all expectations of perfection. And I think so often as parents, we are laser focused on the problems that our kids are having or the problems we are having with them that really we can look aside from the good things that are happening. So the first thing to do is start recognizing the good things. There's always something good to be thankful for, always something that you can be addressing positively with your kids. Second wooing heart technique I use is, what is that kid's love language? If I'm taking my son to a basketball game, we're on the way home, I'm stopping at the local Portillo's to get him his double cheeseburger because that speaks volumes of love to him. And now I might not reap a great relational reward that night through that action, but it's an example of me understanding what meets that love need for him and doing it, and it's showing him that I care about him.
That's great. So that gives you permission to speak the hard sentence in his life or ask the hard questions.
Right. And it's not an overnight process. It's a quite opposite of that. It's a long process. We're in relationships with our children. We don't want to expect them to just jump when we say jump. That's not how it works. That's not how it works with anybody. And you're learning that as a parent when your child goes into the teenage years. It's a transition from children obeying you to having a relationship, hopefully, with a future adult that you'll become friends with.
I think you have used a phrase over and over in this that I hope our audience has picked up on. You said for a parent to do this well, you've got to have relational interaction.
Yes.
When we think about that phrase, relational interaction, I want to ask our audience, after hearing Amy talk, what quality of relationship do you have with your child? If you are bothered that you don't have that quality relationship with them and their friends do, ask about how you're interacting. Amy's given us some very practical ways to interact. And if you want to go further into this, I can tell you she's only begun to scratch the surface of the book that they wrote together. Her and Rob, her husband, wrote 5 Reasons for Spiritual Apathy in Teens, What Parents Can Do to Help. This is not a long book. You could sit down and read this in one setting. It's 80 pages. It's a small trim size. It is incredibly insightful, and it will give you instant action points to start using in your home to change your relationship with your child to be a lot more interactional so that you can have these wonderful conversations and have the more delicate conversations the way God intended. Amy, thank you for challenging our audience with this. I want people to go out and buy this book. I want them to go to your website, visionaryfam.com. and take a look at what they're doing and be part of their ministry. Thanks so much, Amy, for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Well, you heard from Amy Rienow. Thank you so much, Amy. Again, we've heard so much from Rob, and we do love, I was joking earlier, we love Rob. He is stinking smart and passionate. But it's just so good to see both sides of this marriage and of this relationship and how God's using both of you and your personalities. So thank you, Amy, for giving us a glimpse into your heart. And speaking of a glimpse, I just don't want you guys to forget, we're giving you a glimpse of the D6 conference when we offer D6 days. And I know I'm all over it. I'm killing you guys today with promotion on D6 days, but here's why, because time's running out. And this is such a cool opportunity for you to, for free, offer great training to not just yourself, but to your team and to the volunteers in your church. And I was just made aware, and this is great news for all the coffee lovers out there, because we are giving away not just one, Ron, but 3 Keurigs.
Not to the same person.
No, not to the same person. I mean, even though that would be super cool.
Because I could get a hot chocolate, a coffee, and a hot tea going all at the same time.
You could have your own coffee bar in your church. But no, there's 3 different winners.
Increases your odds of winning.
In order to win, you go to d6days.com and
just sign up.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's free. We're going to be selecting 3 of the people who have pre-registered for the D6 Days event, online event. That's free. And they will win a Keurig, those who are drawn. Not everyone. Those who are drawn. And there's 3 opportunities to win. So good luck. Go to d6days.com and sign up.
Are you going to give the fine print legal language like you hear in all those little commercials on TV? Exactly.
Sign up. And we're going to be sipping coffee next week as we listen to 2 more friends of D6. Again, maybe some names you might not know very well, but some dynamic folks that you're going to enjoy. Christina Embry and...
That's right, David Jones. Christina Embry opened up the conference last year in our first session.
And she slayed it.
That's right. And David Jones is one of the key architectural editors for D6 curriculum. And he's going to be talking through why do people need home resources, devotional study guides, in order to get to the parents and into the homes.
Little known fact, I don't know if I've ever said this publicly, David Jones is one of my favorite interviews ever.
David Jones and my interview coming up next week is not one of mine because he picks on me.
Then that makes it must-listen radio there for the podcast. Hey, next Tuesday, make sure to circle your calendars. For Tuesday, that's when we want to make sure you're paying attention to our new episodes that are coming out each week. We hope you have a great week of ministry. Thank you for listening to the D6 Podcast.
You've been listening to the D6 Podcast. You can learn more about D6 at d6family.com. And if you're a minister, we invite you to join the D6 Leader Network by going to d6leadernetwork.com.